I'm gonna go ahead and call the Real Property Committee meeting to order. It's 1 o'clock. It is October 7th, and we are meeting virtually due to the COVID-19 pandemic and dogs barking. The call to order. Next item on the agenda, just a second here.
That's a first.
I have one of those at home too.
Me too.
Good Lord. And we're dog sitting too. So yeah, so sorry about that. And so the next item on the agenda is called to order, and notice that the press and public have been duly notified with the Freedom of Information Act. All committee members are present, including the administration. And the next item on the agenda is approval of previous month's minutes of September 9th of 2020. If there's a motion entertained.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, no changes, deletions, alterations. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Perfect. Next, we have citizens'
That's an aye.
comments. And we're going to roll into citizens' comments. I think we said we have 3 for the record.
Yes, Mr. Craig Wheeler, 3205 Hartnett Boulevard. I prefer green space at the IOP Marina. James Golden, 3505 Cameron Boulevard. Comments never read at the council voted out a long time small business for personal reasons. It is unfortunate that I must start this comment with, quote, "I'm very disappointed and quite honestly embarrassed by your actions over the last 2 to 3 years. But since the coronavirus has hit, council has escalated my negative feelings about your performance. You have turned into a council of personal objectives, repeatedly dismissing residents' overwhelming input. Not so. Hidden personal agendas are everywhere. Council's contempt for its residents is disturbing. We are not morons. Mayor Carroll and City Manager Fregoso, you have lost control of the ship. Who is in charge? RB. Since you have thrown out the residents' input on the future of the marina and continue to reference untrue data from that night, it makes it clear you have no interest in what we want. As for your meeting regarding tidal wave, I strongly suggest you pay more attention to over 100 people who showed up at 8 a.m. to support tidal wave versus 1 out-of-touch council member. Our wishes are very clear. Figure it out. So disappointed between the beach and tidal wave. You have the island, the joke of the low country, so proud to live here, not. You're hiding from the public behind executive sessions. Unfortunately, again, I doubt this will make any impact at all. Patsy Hinman, 7 Barnacle Road. I had hoped that today you would be discussing plans that would give Tidal Wave an opportunity to stay on IOP, either by renegotiating a lease with them or by issuing an RFP that could give them an opportunity to compete for the water sports dock. Since that is not on the agenda, I hope you will be mindful that Tidal Wave supporters will not forget those council members who turned their backs on Tidal Wave and on resident input. We are watching everything that council does, especially those things which impact the city's budget. We are not prepared to sit idly by, just watching as some private group, supposedly with private funds and manpower, decides what they think is best for the marina area. I had a good laugh this morning when I saw News 5 saying, quote, Isle of Palms Mayor Jimmy Carroll said he would like to see a park there, but he would ultimately listen to the residents of the island, close quote. That would be a switch. I trust that the Real Property Committee will do the right thing, even if you could not get a unanimous vote regarding the next steps for the marina. And that closes your comments.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item is we'll go on to old business. First one is update on marina dock permitting. And I know we finally have our, well, let's go ahead and work on that one. Desiree, this is for the entirety of the docks?
Yes, can y'all hear me?
Sort of.
Barely.
Turn the volume up a little bit, Desiree.
I was having issues with my Zoom. Is it better now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, hello, everyone. Sorry I was a little late. Just coming back from the marina. So like Chair Buchanan was saying, now we have permits for all the docks. Originally, we had received all permits related to the dock rehabilitation project that we're just getting started to kick off. The pending permitting issues related to the water sports dock have been completed. Last week, we received the final permit from the Army Corps of Engineers. You recall that we were waiting on that before any work to that dock could be done. We received it. I sent a notice to all of you all and the rest of council. And so now the dock is fully permitted. as you all know, we still have the issue to resolve when it comes to the encroachment of that dock into the setback of the water line. And now we're going to be able to do that work. And as I have notified you all in the past, the plan would be to get Salmons Dredging to do the work that would, to push that dock out of the encroachment, basically, as part of the work that they're going to be doing on the docks along Morgan Creek. So that's the update. We've received the permit. Now that dock is fully permitted, we have on hand the OCRM permit and the Army Corps.
Desiree,
Go ahead, Kevin.
is there any time limit on the compliance of this dock, moving this dock in on the permit? Because the rest of the rehabilitation is probably not starting right away, so it might be a little while before we pull this floating dock back. Is there any time limit?
Well, the interesting thing is that the Corps asked the city, they wanted the dock relocated out of the encroachment ASAP, but we didn't get the permit from them ASAP. We just got the permit from them last week. And the notice was the city shouldn't do any work until those permits are in hand. That needs to happen immediately now that we have the permit. So I'm thinking in the next couple, month or two, while we have Salmons here on site, we would be working on moving that dock back. The other improvements that are permitted related to the gangway, the ADA compliant gangway that's included in that conceptual design that council approved back in 2018, that we have a 5-year timeline to get that work completed. However, the city does have the ability to request an extension to that. So that's available to the city should it desire to extend it past 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Any questions, concerns? Desiree, how long did it take for us to get those permits from? What was the permitting process? I mean, because obviously, like you said, they want us to start the business. Start right away. But then, how long has it been just for the public to realize?
Way more than a year. It was more. It was about a year and several months potentially, just to get the response from the permitting agency. So once submitted, it took about a year for them to grant the permit. But before that, there was all this work developing the permit application, getting the documents and the drawings and the specs all completed. That took several months as well. So yeah, it's a long process, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Brian, it is notable though that they granted a variance to allow Tidal Wave to operate through September to not impact the season. So while it might seem like they sat on this, they were managed, and I'm sure it does right to that date as well, knowing that we were trying not to interfere with the business at the same time.
Yeah, the Corps did give an exception for the encroachment, and the city also offered alternative dock locations for them to relocate. And after we got the notification from the Corps requesting the encroachment to be removed.
But said another way, there was no expectation that we would start the work before October by the Corps.
Right. So Desiree, do we need to for us to move forward on this prior to the rest of the rehabilitation project at the marina? We're not going to have to put together an RFP for that or anything like that. Do you think we can use it would be fall underneath that bid number in order to get that corrected?
Well, what we would like to do is, and I was at the marina meeting with Salmons Dredging to get them to evaluate moving the dock back, for them to tell us a cost of what that would take and a timeline for them to do it while they're on site. So that's what we're working on now. Now that we have the permits and we are in the process of executing the contract with Salmons, we were hoping to do it as a change order to that contract.
Desiree, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not moving pilings, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Anybody? Good. Update on Marina Dock Rehabilitation Project.
All right. Well, we are in the process. As you all know, council approved the award of the contract last month. Since then, we have been working on the documents to get them executed by both parties. We have encountered a little bit of a hiccup when it comes to the builder's risk and the fact that the total amount of the project is now increased by virtue of the alternates that were approved. So the contractor has had some trouble securing builder's risk through their typical or their long-term insurance partner. We have chimed in and reached out to the city's insurance and asked them for a quote to see if they would be willing to include that in our policy, and also through the policy that the property insurance that we have for the dog. So the cost that they had received, the estimate that they had received originally of $15,000 that was approved by council, went up to $50,000. So we're trying to see if there are other alternatives available for them to get builder's risk, whether it's through us or through them. So that is still being worked on, executing the documents and for them to get the performance and payment bonds that need to be in place, and also all the other insurance documentation that they have to provide. I've not executed the contract yet, which is a little frustrating to me, but it's just, all these moving parts when you're dealing with different insurance companies and whatnot. So we had a meeting today. Actually, it's still going on. I left so that I could take this meeting. So that's why I was a little late. But they're working and having a discussion around the fuel HUD. You remember that we are doing it as an alternate. And so they're on site right now discussing how that could be designed and what permits it's necessary to obtain in order to rebuild that fuel HUD. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions, Administrator? Anybody? Okay. Good. The next item is update on Marina restaurant lease proposal. This is getting so close. I can feel it. Yes.
Yes.
I know we're moving forward with the families group, working with Brian Berrigan, working with us still. Just a couple more things we need to punch out.
I just received this morning the final reviewed document from our attorneys. I think that we should be returning the final document to the IOP families group by the end of this week, after council has an opportunity to look at it and have an opportunity to ask questions or raise any concerns on that. But yes, we're very, very close. We have an internal goal of having everything executed and approved by council by November 1st.
All right. That's good news. Everybody's excited. Okay. Any questions?
Nope.
Moving on. Update on a proposed ADA compliant beach walkover. I know Douglas is on here with us. I know we're trying to get still work on some more information on that and gather information and some dollar amounts, really, I think is the biggest part. Desiree, you want to touch this? Douglas?
Yes, and I'll let Douglas talk to the alternative that we presented to the committee last month for consideration. We got some numbers back and some visuals that I'm sure Douglas will share via his screen. So one of the things that we wanted to do was to confirm with the Greenbelt program the city's ability to maybe modify or amend our proposed project in the event that that changes, whether or not we would still be able to use those funds for improving ADA access, even though it might look a little bit different than the project that had been originally approved by the county. And basically what they said is once the committee and council agrees on an alternate approach or an alternate material or design, to submit that to the committee. It might be necessary to go through a different approval process, but if it is in the same location and somewhat similar, or dealing with the same intent or trying to meet the same goal, then it might not be necessary. But as of right now, they can't really say for sure whether we would have to go through another funding cycle without more detail about what this modified project would look like. But certainly not impossible.
Okay.
It sounded optimistic. Douglas, do you want to share with them what we have found?
Yes. we reached out to the vendor that worked with Hilton Head on their boardwalk. And we got a quote from them. I don't know if that's coming up on your screen.
It's there now.
There. That's a product called it's called Mr. Boardwalk. And it is a modular, let me see if I can, it's a modular system that basically clips together. It comes in slats with a stainless steel rod that connects the slats, the modular panels together. What they've quoted us, they've given us 2 quotes, one for using 5/4-inch Epay boards and one for using full 2x Epay boards. And the quotes, and this is for 280 linear feet by 8 feet wide, which is the size that we think we would need on that path. And the 5/4-inch material is $46,000 to make that run. And the 2x Epay material is $59,000 to make the same run. That vendor estimated that it would take a day for somebody to install it. So we reached out. It would take a contractor, 4 men with a forklift, a day, in their opinion. So we reached out to Earthworks and explained it to them and showed them the product. Asked them to assume it would take twice that amount. So they told us that it would be about $5,000 in labor to install it in 2 days. So, if we were to go with the 2x material, which is the material that they guarantee for vehicular traffic, they warn us that if we drive on the 5/4-inch material, they think it would be okay, but they don't guarantee the product. So if we went with the 2x material in Epay at roughly 60,000, we had 5,000 in there for installation, and then we added 15% on top of all of that for a contingency. That gets you a budget of roughly $75,000.
Douglas, did you ask on long term? I mean, long term, ideally, we do more than just 42nd Avenue. Are they willing to give a time frame by which pricing gets better if we increase usage over time?
I don't think so. I think if anything, pricing, if it's like anything else, it goes up over time instead of down.
Well, I'm sure the wood pricing does.
Yeah. So they will only, and they kind of warn you that with lumber doing what it's doing in the pricing world, that I think the quote is good for 30 days.
Dangerous question, Desiree, because we always called it the sort of the bird watch. But does this have any accommodation to move aside to let vehicles go by, or is this just strictly a parallel stretch down to the beach? The observation deck. I hate using that term, but a place where mothers and children and wheelchairs and all can move aside. Is there any accommodation in that plan for that?
Not that quote.
Okay.
The question would be, is it possible to have an area that expands further than the 8 feet wide that the path would be?
Correct.
Would that be possible? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm sure they were very much, it is constructed pursuant to what we asked for. I mean, we talked to so we could do 9 feet, we could do 10 feet. They would basically do whatever we asked for. He did say that the 8-foot width was kind of the best bang for the buck in terms of lumber lengths. But yes, I'm sure it could be done if we chose to do it.
Well, the cheaper option is not an option. I mean, we wouldn't put something in hoping that a truck doesn't break it.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think that was our thought too.
Yeah.
They don't guarantee the thicker one either. Douglas. Is that correct?
No, they do. That is, they do guarantee that for regular vehicular use. You know, if we put concrete trucks on it or something else. they wouldn't.
Right, yeah. For,
But just
for-
pickup truck-
for pickup trucks or rescue, yeah, like that, yeah.
Right.
Okay, go ahead, Desiree.
And I, I would like for us to have an opportunity to show this to the fire department and the police department, just to, get their thoughts and whether or not they foresee any issues. I don't think so. I don't think that there will be any, but just to give them an opportunity to provide some feedback. And then the other concern I have is the increased maintenance of that product, because it's, parallel to the sand on the ground. And I know that that was an issue that Hilton Head was grappling with, and we would need to develop a plan to consistently be checking on that boardwalk, flowing sand, and I'm concerned about it being high maintenance.
So Desiree, how? Go ahead, I'm sorry. Ryan.
Well, right now we have the temp trail down there in itself, and that in itself is high maintenance. And with the buckling and with the undulations and the unevenness of it, I mean, we basically have to pull that thing back just to regrade it, just to put it back down again.
And the stakes pulling up from the stakes.
Right, and I think something like this is obviously, I think some of our biggest concerns is probably going to be the sand encroachment, and I think that it's just going to take a backpack blower and whatever. Obviously, we can't get a skid steer on it, but it's definitely going to have to go through, and kind of the same way you have at 21st Avenue with the sand encroaching on those areas, and it's just, it's
a beach.
It's a beach. It's an animal, and that's one of the things we have to do, and it's going to be a maintenance issue no matter what. And I think, I think this product, while we can, go ahead, and I think it's a great idea to let the fire department and police department look at it and make sure that it's okay with it. I still think it's a better product than what we have down there now. Yeah. And they can as well reach out to Hilton Head, where it's being utilized now, and ask them of their concerns, if they've had any issues with it. But that being an 8-foot wide walkway, I think it's there's plenty of room for people with strollers or wheelchairs to pass each other on either side. Obviously, we're not going to have room for somebody there in a car at the same time, but I think this product is really meeting the needs of what we were looking for without encroaching in and taking down the natural habitat, the dune line, and creating a bigger problem there.
So procedurally, Desiree, because it's a 30-day quote, Ryan, I'm just thinking what we need to do. I mean, I would have them go forward with looking at police and fire, but also go forward with the county to see if the county will approve and be prepared to move it forward to council. Correct. Without having to come back to real property.
And Desiree, I know you had reached out to the Greenbelt, or reached out to the Greenbelt committee to find out if what was approved could be modified to approve this. And like I said, the fact that we are preserving green space, and that is in their name, Greenbelt, is the fact that I think they would be more than happy to move those funds over to something else.
I don't think that we'll have an issue with that. If this is where you all want to continue to lead on, I can send her and send the committee the documentation that we've shown you, and try to get a response from them. But there's a couple things. So we need to get council to approve on this change in the scope of the project before we move forward. And then two, I also have, we need to look at our procurement code, because any expenditure of over $25,000 has to be done by a competitive bid process, unless the city can justify sole source. So if they are the only vendor that can provide this, we haven't gotten to that analysis yet, but if not, the city would have to go through the bidding process, which is always, could be timely. So I think the next step would need to be Douglas to try to get a different quote, or maybe a longer term quote rather than 30 days. If they understand sort of procedurally what we need to do, get updated quotes to include the observation area that would go to the side, see if they could do that and how that would impact the total cost. Get a confirmation from the county that we'll be able to use those funds. And once we do, then I think the committee can make a recommendation to council to change somewhat the scope of the project and have that approved.
So
And then-
Desiree, to Ryan's point, with 8 feet, do we need the observation area? I mean, the current width is probably, I'm guessing it's 5 feet. Douglas, do you know offhand?
No, I don't know. I think it's slightly 8 feet. I think it would be difficult for 8 feet, within 8 feet for a vehicle and a wheelchair to pass. I don't think you could do that.
Vehicles just
They
rare
would-
though, is,
Yeah, I think they could just put a tire off of the path if, in the unlikely event they did happen to meet, I think they could make it work. So
but I think 8 feet significantly larger than what's down there right now in terms of width. I doubt it's more than 4 to 5 feet.
No, I would agree with you on that, Randy. Kevin?
Couldn't we just get a couple extra runs of, say, 6 foot of this stuff and put them to, on the sides of the pathway for people to get off the main walkway and pull over on a wheelchair or whatever? I mean, there's got to be a simple solution for people to pull off the pathway.
I would agree with that. If you all deem it desirable to have I have no doubt that we could easily make the observation area happen if you all wanted to do it.
The other comment, for whatever it's worth, is, lumber is really crazy now. It's been crazy for the last 30, 60 days. And what we're hearing is come November, it's starting to get back to normal. So I don't know if they mentioned that to you, Douglas, or you have a feeling on that either way.
Kevin, do you have any idea so I know that pine is heavily impacted by the fires. I don't know, quite frankly, if ePay, this vendor mentioned lumber pricing being crazy, and he didn't mention it was coming down. I don't know. I don't think that any ePay should be affected, from just my thoughts about it, but maybe it is. I don't know.
I've not heard that. I just know every time hurricane season comes, they raise the prices up, and then it calms down, it comes back down. Then this year with COVID in the mills, so it's been really kind of crazy. But from my lumber source, they're hearing that it's going to get back to a little bit of normal sometime in November. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. And I really don't know if the EPA is affected by it or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure. In the construction business, we haven't seen anything decreasing or foresee it decreasing anytime soon. So Desiree, I think we need to go through, I don't know, obviously you don't need a motion from us right now, but because what we're going to do is, Douglas, you're going to look for other sources of this product to see whether or not we have to do other bids that meets these standards. It's drivable, 1 inch or 2x4 material to meet there. Okay. And then we'll go from there.
And I think I'm understanding that you all do collectively, you would like to include the wider area for observation or passing.
Well, I think the biggest concern with that, Douglas, if we're making it handicap access and there is an emergency that the people have to respond to, and there's perhaps somebody on the path at that time, they'll have to get off to the side. And instead of getting off in a wheelchair off to the side into a sandy area or something, they just need a spot where they can get off the side, out of the way of emergency vehicles when they're going through. And I think that's really what the intent is, because in normal use, people will be able to walk back and forth on that all day long next to each other and stop and stand, and people can get around. I think the biggest concern is when there's an emergency vehicle on the path and there's somebody who needs assistance on the path, who needs to get off. And I think that's our biggest concern.
That's right.
So we'll add that to the estimates going forward. I did want to just circle back to one thing, that was a point that was made on the maintenance of this path. And I did talk with Donnie a bit about the fact that currently our landscape maintenance contractor is cleaning off 2 or 3 of the paths. I think it's 21st and the one at the public restrooms, and there could be a third one. The contractor is not doing this one currently. I think it would be wise for us to expand his work, include this one
Okay.
going forward. So I'll talk to him about what kind of annually that cost for that service. So we have that as well.
In those temp trails, the one at 42nd Avenue is 6 feet wide, and the one at 9 and 31A is 4 feet wide, just to give reference.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Desiree, you have everything you need from us. You're going to contact the Greenbelt Committee. Douglas, you're going to work on trying to find other vendors that supply something similar. So whether or not we have to put out RFP or request for this. And then, yeah, that was it right now. Yeah.
A confirmation from the county and also answers related to procurement, and hopefully we can get all those answers by the next meeting and have an opportunity for you all to make a recommendation to council to change its scope, and then we can move forward.
And Desiree, just for the record, what was the amount that the Greenbelt had allotted for us? Everybody's aware of that?
We requested 100,000. The city was going to share some of the costs with the design and the engineering and permitting for that. So that was another question I wanted to ask Douglas, whether or not we would need to require OCRM permitting for the area that expands past their jurisdictional line.
We wouldn't if it's less than 8 feet wide, is my understanding. We've been through this with them before. And so as long as we put the observation turnaround area that would be more than 8 feet,
Or landward? Okay,
that landward of
Landward.
their setback line, I think will be good, but
perfect.
I will confirm that.
Okay, thanks, Douglas. Anything else? Good.
Nope.
Perfect. New business discussion about addressing flooding issues on the beach access paths. That's obviously this has always been an issue. And I was just trying to find ways to put this on the agenda. Because moving forward, we had talked in public safety, talked about and throughout city council with paid parking and utilizing those funds for, improving beach access and allowing people to get to the beach in a safer environment, more healthy environment. But that's still up in the air, and we're just trying to identify those areas that are most problematic, and that we can start making the beach more accessible for folks. And one of my concerns was, well, first, let's find the problems that are most problematic, but then correlate them to where a lot of our crosswalks are at as well, and try to utilize and focus and direct people to utilize those crosswalks more often, just because we're working on improving those crosswalks. But if we can get more people to utilize beach access points where there are delineated crosswalks and better beach access to get there, I think it's better overall. Desiree, you want to touch base on this? I know you reached out to Sullivan's Island as well to get some of their concerns and what they have to say on this.
Yeah, so I apologize, not a lot of progress on this topic, but I did receive a while ago from our neighbors their cost estimate for some of their footbridges. They have been using their Greenbelt funding for the installation of these footbridges on Sullivan's. And a lot of people ask, why don't we have them? And their topography is very different than ours. They're very, very flat. But we were thinking that may be an option of installing footbridges on our beach access paths that typically flood up until and stopping it before the dune. If not, you would have to. We've talked at length about those requirements per OCRM when you're trying to get through the dune. So what Chair Buchanan and I had talked about is identifying those beach access paths, and that's something that we can do internally and try to maybe get a priority list of those that need to be addressed first. And potentially, we do have beach preservation fee funds that are budgeted for improvements to beach access and boardwalks and enhancing ADA access to the beach. We could use some funds for that, or we can also use some of the funds that we still have through the Greenbelt program. So we'll be working on this fall and winter and put a plan together for implementation hopefully next year, or for your consideration.
Ready?
Yeah, it would be helpful to sort of map the palm flooding to the beach access path flooding, because the last thing we want to do is build great beach access paths in a flooded area that just continues to encourage people to damage the side strips on the road while we wrestle with the parking issues. So somehow, Desiree, as you're looking at that, mapping those relationships would be very helpful if we're looking at, you know, potentially beginning to do some of this work next year.
That's a good point.
Thanks, Randy. Any else on that? Anybody else? Perfect. Next item is discussion or next steps for the development of public dock green space at the IOP Marina. I think one of the first things we have to take note of is, I think, is bringing it into compliance with OCRM regulations and get it out of the setback and making that happen. And as for anything else down there, I'm open for discussion.
You mean Army Corps?
Army Corps. Yeah, Army Corps. Yeah, thanks, Randy. Yeah,
Yeah.
Army Corps. Yeah, Kevin.
I guess my question on green space, we all want green space. I want green space, but how's that going to work? Where are we going to find the green space? You know, Brian's not going to give up any parking spaces, and the restaurant's not going to give up any parking spaces. So where are we going to accomplish this green space? I think the only thing possible is, you know, somebody might suggest the 10 lots that Tidal Wave has. Well, that's 12 feet by 60 feet, which really isn't much of anything. And then where are our residents going to park if we turn that into green space? So I'm just not sure how we accomplish green space unless I'm missing something.
Right, and that's why I put it on the agenda here, because there is a lot of discussion and the council took the action to move forward with green space, and I wanted to have that discussion of what that green space was.
Yeah, I just don't know where we find it to create it.
So let me, this obviously been a long topic. And I don't know that green space is the appropriate terminology for what we're looking at. The bottom line is that dock represents the only water, call it whatever you want, green space access, whatever, that's available to the public, because literally everything else at that marina has required some financial transaction to enjoy the water, right? So there is a dock that, you know, however the city deems, and we've had liability discussions, we've had all kinds of discussions for several years now. But that dock, however used, is the only water accessible point available to the island. As for residential parking, Kevin, 41st is resident only until 6 o'clock at night. That has been true now for, I don't know, 2 years, Desiree, roughly. And I think, you know, and I think the city needs to continue, frankly, to work with Brian. You know, I have not been down there, but I'm hearing there's a lot of noise about parking signs that have gone up recently, increased enforcement recently. And I think, you know, as the city works to determine how best to use space down there, I think we need to continue to have some cooperative discussions with Brian Berrigan on the overall what it means. I mean, the city's sitting here putting, you know, $4 million into commercial use docks. I would hope that we have constructive discussions about how this marina increasingly provides benefit to the residents and the people that are funding these projects. And I think directionally, Desiree, I think that's all we're asking at this point is, you know, come back to council, tell us what's possible. And Ryan, hopefully we have community input, that it's not council sitting around saying this is what we could do, that there actually are folks that are interested in providing input.
Right. And I think one of the biggest things, like I said previously, is, I mean, the fact that, you know, the dock is and has been in violation of the Army Corps setbacks. I think that's, no matter what goes on there, that's going to be priority.
Ryan, there's also open issues with OCRM that, you know, we haven't gotten any determination back from OCRM on that dock configuration either. So that has been open frankly, as long as the Army Corps of Engineers discussions have been going on.
Well, just to clarify, the city received the permit from the Army Corps
Right.
this summer. So that, those changes to the dock in order to comply to the permit need to happen in 5 years, within 5 years. What needs to happen immediately is the
Center line encroachment.
correct. And are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted
Yes.
to share with you all so that you can visualize the areas that were leased to the water sports operation that are now under the city, would be under the city's control. As you all know, the other, the restaurant and then the marina operator have their own areas, but this would be the area that would be available to the city for reconfiguration and, the development of some green space area and some parking. So this is the only piece of property within the marina that the city now would have control over. And this is the area that you all would need, city council would need to determine, what does it look like, as it becomes a public dock with some green space. So there is space available there to contemplate or accommodate the conceptual vision that council would have for that space. It would be within this area that you can see here shaded darker. So,
Okay.
If it is the will of the committee, we can start reaching out to some architects. I know that some have reached out to the city, interested in working in developing some conceptual ideas or what's possible. You all recall that this was also studied and conceptually designed as part of the referendum plan as a public dock. So there was some work done back in 2015, 2016, 2017 for that area that could also be looked at as we move forward with the plan for this area.
I would revisit that, Desiree, and Ryan, I don't know what you think, but frankly, we have a lot of new council members that should be put in front of council as a starting point.
Okay. We can do that. And in looking at this, and we talk about green space, I'm going to highlight these areas here. This here is what council had voted for green space, but with the renovation, of the restaurant parking lot is changing direction a little bit, and I would assume that I'd like, if you're going to do green space or what have you, is try to make it stretch, along this area, and try and beautify, or I guess, and like Randy had said, in green space, I think is the wrong terminology for it, because we don't have a whole lot of space down there for green space. It's, I think it's just making better use of the property that we have.
No, and I totally agree with both of you and Randy, what you just said, but I think there's a lot of people out in the public that are thinking it's, we're going to have a big, nice green space with parking, or not a park-like setting.
Right.
I just wanted to throw that out, that seems to be a little tough thing to do right now.
The only thing, I'm sorry, Desiree, I was going to say the only thing that had even come close to coming in front of council was Councilmember Ferenz. And I don't know, Desiree, it was November, December when we were discussing this, had drawn up some plans. I personally, I've not seen anything other than that. And it was just some thoughts on the art of the possible. And beyond that, I think what we're asking is what is possible? What do we have? And what could be done with it to grant some public access to the water? I think, frankly, Kevin, a lot of people said, well, it's not appropriate for kayaks. It's not appropriate for, we didn't purpose this, right? Nobody said this is, the exact purpose. We just said it's a dock that reverts to public access for, what is determined by council to be an appropriate use.
And Randy, you brought up the fact that this is really the only spot where public has access to the water. Just to remind everybody, Breach Inlet ramp is still available for public access, and residents, while it is open frequently, residents can get keys to the lock and they can launch from there. And
Small boats,
they
kayaks,
can
things like that.
Yep.
Yep.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Small boats, kayaks, stand-up paddle boards, kind of the same things that was getting pushed for this dock as well. So maybe not small boats, but at least kayaks and paddle boards is what people wanted, and it's really been available this whole time to them. But yeah, Desiree, go ahead.
So one thing, oh, me or Kevin?
Go ahead, Desiree.
Go ahead, Desiree. Sorry.
All right, it's because I'm sharing my screen, I can't see all the little faces. So I'm not aware of any other design about this space other than the one that ATM presented to the city as part of the referendum plan. So that's
Okay.
what I was referring to. Two, I do think that the restaurant group has plans to extend or highly utilize the green area adjacent to the bulkhead for some seating and maybe some, benches or picnic tables, and that, the city would have an opportunity to, just like you did earlier, along the bulkhead to have some, green space, although it would be limited, of course, just because of the space, to put some benches and picnic tables potentially. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that I think it was Councilmember Smith who also brought up the idea of looking into the ability for people to store kayaks or stand-up paddle boards. That was, I believe that was part of the final plan that was part of the referendum, or maybe one of the scenarios that was developed by the Planning Commission, I believe, that did include a structure there for people to leave their kayaks and store them. So that's something that she's asked that the committee look into, the feasibility of doing that. So we would have to accommodate that within the space that would be available to the city.
Interesting. Okay.
So
Go ahead, Kevin.
well, I just kind of looking in the future, it's our dock now to maintain, and have we, Desiree, started a process yet of how we're going to, are we going to put a gate on it? We're going to keep it locked? Cameras, lights, have we started that process of how we're going to protect the dock and, keep kids off of it at night partying and, like I said, cameras and lights and so forth. And is there one of our departments, whether it be rec or public works, what department will be watching over this? Or are these too early questions to ask?
It's not too early at all, and I assume it would fall under real property still.
Mm-hmm. It would be part of the city's real property. We have been talking internally about what options are available, whether, managed by the city, what that could look like. Also by, we're going to have two long-term operators at the marina, the restaurant and the current marina operator, what those arrangements could look like. So we're just trying to figure out what options are available and to present to council for your consideration, and then what that, just what that would look like. Again, council made this decision last month to move forward in this direction. So before then, I really hadn't spent a whole lot of time developing what, operationally what that would entail. Certainly possible. It's just a matter of stabilizing something that is sustainable to the city. This would not be the first public dock that a municipality has. Shem Creek has one in the town of Mount Pleasant, city of Charleston. So I did, Douglas and I have had some conversations about reaching out to those folks and trying to get some feedback on how they manage it, some of the rules that are in place, so that we can potentially mirror some of that in this location.
And Desiree, it's not inconceivable to look at the same camera discussion we had for Breach Inlet that's monitored by police. I think, the technology changes over the last few years, and I don't frankly know where we are with the requested cameras at Breach Inlet, but, we had a long conversation about those cameras monitoring that area. Certainly whatever we do should be monitored. You know, you have a fire station right there, and you have, you know, hopefully police monitoring of the entire marina at night.
Right. Yeah, and that camera's been put on hold because it's fallen outside of budget when we had budgeted
Yeah.
for that
Yeah.
area. But definitely. But yeah, these are the questions and concerns that, you know, that's why, like I said, I put it on here because, you know, like I said, majority of council went through and voted to make this happen. And you know, the residents are going to be looking for, you know, some guidance or what's going on down there. And if it's, and I'm not sure, you know, where we're going to go with it. So, I mean, this was start the discussion with it. And whether Desiree, you reach out to architects, or I'm sure we have some, you know, that were really vocal during the discussion about this, who may want to help out as well, and or you know, anything else that needs to go on down there. But yeah, that was the impetus for this.
Two things, Chair, if I will. After council's vote, I did reach out to Kirby Marshall about any necessary changes to the permit, because the use included in those permits were for commercial use, so that would have to be amended for public use and passive use. We're going to be looking at reaching out to OCRM about what the city would need to do to submit any paperwork in order to do that. According to Kirby's experience, whenever the change in use goes from something very active to more passive, it's usually no problem other than just a letter with the action by council. So that's something that we have been working on, and also any necessary equipment to facilitate the kayak and paddleboard launching. That's something that we have talked about before. If there's anything that needs to be or should be installed so that people are closer to the water when they do that, to facilitate that.
Okay. And Desiree, I'm not quite, I mean, you talked about moving it from a commercial activity or commercial permit to more passive permit. Is that a must? Is something that we need to do, or is it
I'm not
just,
sure.
does it change anything? I mean, because you know, I don't know if there's even a reason for that. I mean, I think it kind of makes it more restrictive still. So I don't know,
Well,
if this one's a little bit more, I mean, if we have in a commercial, because it is in a commercial area, it has been commercial for, you know, as long as it's been there. You know, it kind of is a little bit more liberal in, you know, in how it's utilized. So, so I don't know. I don't know if we even have to go through the permitting process because we already have one.
Yes, and that was exactly my question. Do we need to do anything different for this permit, and, you know, for the change in use? Because it may be that, you know, 2 or 3 years from now, you know, maybe the public dock is not being used, and the city is in a position to want to revisit a commercial operation there. That's certainly possible, you know, if that's the will of council. So if that's the case, you know, do we have to go back through the whole permitting process one more time? So those are just questions, because we've had so many issues with permitting. I just want to make sure that we cross our T's and dot our I's.
It's not even that. I just the reason I say it is because, I mean, right now we don't know what the use is for, but let's say the city wanted to have an event down there, you know, or something going on and utilize that dock. Obviously having an event and having, you know, something going on down there, because there's very possibility. And I don't know if that having an event down there to do different things would be classified as being as passive is the only thing.
Ryan, I would think it would be treated the same as a 501c or the Exchange Club or anything that's not there for the purpose of, you know, commercial gain. I think the question in front of the community is the long-term purpose, right? I think the residents, all in all, would like to see something public commensurate to these lease terms that we have to 2045. I don't imagine that the public's intent, and the public that's pushed for this, that their intent is 2 years from now that the next council sits there and has another contemplative session about whether or not we switch it back to commercial. I think, you know, we pick a plan. I mean, Ryan, you were on council back when this lease was given to 2045. I think we need to be thinking longer term for the public since that marina was purchased for some public use that we think long-term for public use. I've talked to, we have an aging population. I've talked to plenty of residents down on this end of the island that would like to just be able to go down there and sit and watch the sun go down. This is, it's a passive space. And Kevin, personally, I like the term passive a lot more than I like, green space or commercial or anything else. Where can you go to go sit on the water, on the intracoastal side of the water, and do anything on this island unless you have a friend that lives on the water? And I think that's the purpose behind it. And I think if we set expectations that, and boy, I've heard this now, Desiree, for going on 3 years. Well, the finger docks are never used at the Morgan Creek Grill, right? Well, they weren't used because they were inappropriate, right? Not because people didn't want to have a boat there. I mean, I've got people asking me, can I pull my boat up to this new public dock and step off and go use the facilities at the marina? I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I think we need to look at very expansively what could be the purpose. How do we manage it? Where are the liabilities? Who's going to, and Kevin, to your point, who's going to be responsible for monitoring? I can't imagine us having a public dock down there without some kind of camera set up. Now, and Ryan, to the point that it's not in the budget, I'm pretty sure there's citizens willing to help in a public-private partnership to do this the right way.
Okay, yeah. I don't think I mentioned anything about the budget, but it's, I was just talking about.
What budget? What budget, right?
Yeah, I didn't say anything about the budget. So yeah, I was just talking about the plan for it. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, back to your point about the permit, I'd leave it alone until somebody raised up, something, DHEC came and said you need to change it or whatever. I agree. I would just leave it alone at this point.
Nothing will get done overnight anyway, Kevin. I can promise you that with OCRM.
Yeah, without a doubt. Okay. So we'll leave this on the agenda for some time to come, and have further discussion. But like I said, I don't know if, we go ahead and reach out to different entities, Desiree, and see if there's any other type of discussion that we can have. And I know, like I said, right now the tenants are still there now. And so obviously we're going to have still working around that issue. So, so yeah, it's something we're going to be working on for a while.
I agree. We got a lot of process to figure out for this.
Okay. Item 7, miscellaneous. Next meeting date is November 4th. Anybody have a problem with that?
Nope.
No, sir.
Got it. We'll make that happen.
Motion to adjourn.
Go ahead. Okay. There's a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's 1:58.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.